Hello everyone, my name is Resident4, and today this is going to be my very first recorded session with my voice. I probably have not done this in like a long time for a deck profile, but I want to showcase this build I'm playing. I'm going to try to make this deck profile not too long. I'll try my best if I cannot promise it. This build is my take on Ogdoadic Mitsurugi, and as you can see by the name of this deck list, it is inspired by Dragon Soul's Cup placement finish. He got 60th at out of 1500 at the YCS Providence this past weekend, and there was a 50th place Ogdo Mitsurugi at the same YCS, and then also that same rank at the same time was the Austrian Nationals, and there was a fourth place Ogdoadic Mitsurugi list that got fourth place out of around 400 players. So as a result of it, actually, um, there what's actually really surprising is that all three versions of the deck actually had differences in their tech choices and different deck ideas. The Austrian version played the alien package, dinosaurs was the street, but simple, and the other one used the Wousu in the main deck. So what I want to do to take my take apart is that I took inspiration from all those builds, but I implemented my own tech choices and decided to mix the ideas together with some of my own. And you can see in the side and some extra deck cards, we are playing some tech choices, but we'll get to those in a bit. We'll get to those later in the video. So firstly, for people that may not know about Ogdoadic, they are a reptile archetype that's focused on the graveyard, which made them the first one in over a decade, but also the first reptile archetype to actually take advantage of Snake Rain. But unfortunately, while the deck had some decent potential and had some good cards, the problem was the deck never really took off, and other than a few agent toss it's had over the years, it's never really had consistent results. Which is kind of a shame because I never thought the archetype was bad on release, but it just needed more support cards like anything else did. And there was also the whole annoying copium sort of meme and some stuff like that. Eventually, I got over that. And I just wanted to accept it anyway. Now, while this deck has seen some experimentation, has not seen a lot of results, there actually have been formats where it actually was a playable deck. For example, in DB Adventure format, Ogdoadic was actually a sleeper deck that took advantage of the package, but it also took advantage of the Adventure package, and it also took advantage of other cards that no other deck at the time could take advantage of. For example, Chaos Ruler was actually a pretty good one. With that came out around the time that format was legal. So it had easy access to Chaos Ruler, and it could use it to dump at any important light target, which was important at the time because Ghost Dogger was common in that format, and they were super important cards in that format, and was huge. While Fill Up the Bear was also good, and if you hit a Water Enchantress, you could immediately bash it to add the Emissary or whatever, or I forgot the name of that spell that summons a token instead of a spell. It also took advantage of Titanic Galaxy, which was also very unique about the deck. It was the only deck to use Titanic Galaxy, which again against Adventure DP was very good because it stopped the Adventure package in its tracks, and it also countered uh, Hero Fusion if they drew it, which is also very strong. And that there's a few other stuff. Zombie Vampire was also the only deck that could utilize the card. It was also good for the same reason Castle was played. But it had unique OTK lines with Queen, so you had and the Charmers were also rightly going to like Dark Charmer in this deck took advantage of that very good. Same thing with Lida. Lida was very good in that format as well with 19 Ghost Ogre being rampant. But the deck would not be playable again for at least for a while until the Evolvers came out. And after a bit of time, the Evolvers for a while, the Evolvers was commonly to play Ogdoadic. And that's because of Leos. For people that may not know what the Leos does, Leos here allows you to set Evil Singularity, which was a card that said that you could target one Evolzar and one Evil Tie in your graveyard. Then you special summon one Evolzar XYZ in your deck. You used the two targets in your graveyard for the Exceed Sign. Which, by the way, if they DD Crow one of the two targets, you still get to summon the XYZ. You just lose one material. That's just realistically the only bad thing about it. But DD Crow was not that helpful. This was pretty good because Leos goes Mega Chala, Fossadic, and if we take Snaker and Noon into consideration, the deck had effectively 31 stars at minimum. And if you did play the DL Bellstar package with simple spoils, you bumped the deck up to like you bumped it up to 16, 19, and then 20. You bumped it up to 20 starters, and if you include Evil Diver for the Evil Style Agent, that's like 21 card starters. That was a lot. And the cool, great thing about it too was both two engines, Ogdoadic and the Evolcer package, all bridged into each other, which is very strong, all because of Promethean Princess. Unfortunately, while it was the best version of Ogdoadic for a bit, it only got a couple of tops in regional events, which again, one of those big huge tops was by Dinosaur from last year. And unfortunately, the deck just was not able to replicate the success. And unfortunately, we got new formats, the deck just got worse, unfortunately, over time, which is sadly a bit unfortunate. So, Ogdoadic was unfortunately now in another unplayable state for a bit. We got way too many cards that just hard counted the deck, and the deck needed some big, huge push. And in Supreme Darkness, we managed to get it. We got the Mitsurugi archetype, and boy, this archetype was really, really strong addition to the Ogdoadic package. Because I'll straight up say it, the Ogdoadic themselves, by themselves as an archetype, they are very bad. But they're mainly, I think they were purposely designed to be generic reptile support, which is why that a lot of their effects are either restricted reptiles or they mainly just work with reptiles in general, which I think that's probably was the reason they were trying to do. But besides that, however, they were good. So what did Mitsurugi provide to the table? Well, Mitsurugi is a ritual-based archetype that focuses on tributing reptiles from and then you ritual summon them. And that's pretty much all it is. But the great thing about Mitsurugi's was that because it was a ritual deck, every Mitsurugi monster had an effect that either replaced themselves with a new card the moment they got tributed. And some of them even came back to the field. That was very good for Ogdoadic because some of their good monsters, like Curse, for example, require you to monster. You contribute it, and if you have Daybreak, you can tribute off the Mitsurugis and get their benefit bonus effects. It was super good value. Like, the great thing was, this was the best version of Ogdoadic ever since Supreme Darkness came out because it actually has a few regional tops at its disposal. The unfortunate reality problem was it was completely heavily outshined by the Raizo version, and there was a few different factors for it. Number one, Ogdo Mitsurugi lost very hard to draw and Lockbird, and draw Lockbird became more popular in that format due to Mitsurugi being a strong engine. And also, although last format was very good, ended up being good anyway, and it was played in almost every deck, even in the side deck at worst case. But the main thing I will mention, however, is being loose and hard to draw is not the only weakness it had. The other weakness too was that it was very graveyard dependent, and Bishop were everywhere because of Malice. Because Malice was a top 2 deck, and Malice played at least 10 Bestials in their main deck, and then all of them served the purpose of being extenders while also being non-engine in the sense that they were good against other line dark based strategies. Like especially Mitsurugi and Ogdoadic just lost hard to that matchup just because they made like so many Bestials at their disposal, which was very annoying for the deck because it needed that graveyard. The other one was Dweller was legal in the format, and Rise would just turbo that card out. And if they knew exactly what you were playing, based on maybe say the tournament goes on for so long and it's very late in the rounds of the regional YCS, and they know, well, let's say they now know what you're playing based on game one, they will turbo out Bestial, back it up with some protection, just in case you drew an out where you cannot, where they just can't out it. Here's unfortunate the problem, people. If they resolve Dweller, you automatically lost the game. Because there was no way you could beat a Rise of Detonator underneath Cross when Dweller was on the board. It was just impossible for this deck to beat. Which was very unfortunate. And the three and big one, and this is probably, in my opinion, was also the biggest one besides the Graveyard Hate, especially Dweller. This deck had a huge. This deck has only 6 1-card stars in the form of triple Nunu if you main deck Zoha and triple Snake Ring. Those were the only 1-card combos the deck had. Every other combo that the deck had was a 2-card combo that involved the Mitsurugis. And while, yes, Mitsurugis gave the deck way more gas now to be able to break apart boards and go second. And their first turn board, by the way, with the Alien Lock was so freaking powerful, it was like nearly unbreakable. Even the best decks like the Raichu deck can to beat the board. The problem is that due to the lack of 1-card stars you have in your deck, especially considering that another big weakness Ogdoadic had was that there's a few bricks you don't want to draw, so you have to always go over 40 to decrease the chance you draw them. You also decrease the chance you draw your 1-card star. You have to rely on 2-card stars to do it. This was not a case with the Evolcer version when you played the deck at 50 or 60 at the time. Because at least in that one, you had a minimum 13 one-card starters, so you had a relatively decent chance to draw at least one of your one-card stars in a 60-card list. Definitely higher chance if you play the deck at 50, which is also pretty good. However, that completely changed it with the new ban list and also the second in wave of Mitsurugi support. In the new ban list, Denner got limited to one. Dweller got banned, which is probably the biggest one. Shifter to one, also a pretty big, huge buff to the deck, because that was another big turn ender for the deck as well. Um, Telling going to one does kind of hurt the deck a bit, but realistically, it hurts every single deck, so like it's not a huge problem. But the biggest one, Malice and Rugi got hit decently well in terms of consistency. Bestial, Jerusalem got limited to one copy now. So, which less Bestials, which is actually good for the deck at least, so that's a decent buff. But perhaps the biggest one is the second wave Mitsurugi support. Mitsurugi's got insane custom-made second wave support. Like it legit turned Mitsurugi into a top tier strategy right now. Yeah, I already thought it was technically a top tier strategy already last format. I already thought it was. So what did they get? They got a new level 4 monster with the same second effect as the other two, but it searches a Mitsurugi monster on summon, almost special attributed. Pretty big. A new ritual spell that mentions all three ritual monsters' names, so Prepep is now a starter and now an option. They have a new spell card that's literally removal and gives you additional. Not we don't use it too often, but it actually I am side decking it. And we have the new Kaiju monster Wousu, which is technically Kaiju that gives you follow up and it constantly provides you. It's a repeatable Kaiju. But Harabiki is a legitimate custom card, and this card is the reason the second wave is so strong. It is literally turns. It literally gives the deck more one-card combos, which is a huge deal for the deck. Now, as you can see in the deck, we do not run Zoha anymore in the deck because we now have enough one-card stars. We don't really need Zoha anymore as a normal sign. There have been times I did miss it in the sense that like I wanted to have a card that could at least was a repeatable normal sign that could at least get rid of bricks in my hand. But those don't really come up as often anymore because your hands are so good now that you literally can play through almost anything. And even though Harabiki's main effect you use it for is a once per duel, if you get this to resolve, you probably have won it from that position, and you probably just keep winning from there. Hold on, unless your hand is unless you get drolled early, which unfortunately this deck still loses hard to droll, but you do have lines to play around droll. Well, but yeah, the second wave support was so good that Ogdo Mitsurugi actually got some good placements, as I stated. It got 2 top 64 places in YCS Providence, and it got 4th place in Austrian Nationals, which is a big, huge milestone for Ogdoadic specifically. Now, is Ogdoadic mainly carried by Mitsurugi? Technically, yes. But honestly, you could say the same thing about Fire King getting hard carried by Snake Eyes. You could say the same case about Bloods being hard carried by Primite. You could say the same about them, and it's the same case here. And I don't know why this deck gets absolutely crapped and shitted on for that. But when those decks get mentioned, it's like, oh no, they always come up and goes, no, bro, you just cannot accept the fact that those decks also are in the same boat as this one is. But rant aside, however, because the second wave was so strong, pure Mitsurugi is actually now a top tier strategy now. Because there's one huge advantage pure Mitsurugi has actually over the other versions of Mitsurugi is it can run Dominus Impulse here. It can run this card, and this is like the best hand trap in the game right now because it negates special summons. And guess what are the best decks in the game right now that are actually Dark Attribute? Yeah, that's right, Pure Mitsurugi, but also most importantly, Malice. Malice can use this card as well, which I'm not happy to hear, unfortunately, but otherwise, though, not too bad, all things considered. But yes, Dawn's Impulse is a pretty big reason to play Pure now, because that card's insane, and also, I will say straight up, Pure Mitsurugi functions essentially like Fire King in the sense that it's simple, it's low to the ground, and it's mid range. Where the moment a single monster, in the context of Fire Kings, the moment a single fire monster got destroyed, there was a domino effect would go off, and then you would gain a ton of advantage and get lots of follow up while doing interactions at the same time. For Mitsurugi's case, it's exactly the same scenario for Mitsurugi, where once a reptile gets distributed, you just gain tons of follow-up, a lot of interactions, and you have too much follow-up where you can just finish them off on the crackback, as long as you can survive a turn. If you somehow don't survive, the deck's grind game was so strong that a lot of decks that are forced to go into top deck mode or have little to no resources left, they would just lose on the crackback against this deck. And that's a huge advantage that Mitsurugi had, is that if you do not stop Mitsurugi from setting it up, you likely lost the game once it got off. Like, there's likely high chance you're not going to win the game unless you open those cracked hand that could break apart their board. Don't ever ado. Let's do the deck real quickly. We have 3 Nibiru. Card is insanely powerful this format. I thought it wasn't going to be good this format because Mitsurugi balanced. Turns out I was wrong. Mitsurugi specifically is not that great because if they play around it correctly, they literally do not care about Mitsurugi. You still have to test the Mitsurugi fall, which is huge. That's pretty much a main big one. But against Malice, if you're patient and time this card correctly versus them, especially either by itself or time it or combo with another hand trap, this card legitimately will just massively cripple their board and massively cripple their follow up. But again, you have to time it correctly. You cannot just shotgun it early. You have to time it right, especially if you combo with another hand trap. Next we have one Nephalibis. One Nephalibis. So if any monster goes from hand to deck to grave, while this grave, you special it, you're locked to the reptiles until the end of next turn. But that's honestly completely fine because if you go into Mitsurugi end board, this lifetime lock restriction literally doesn't matter because the Mitsurugis is the payoff of Ogdoadic now, and it's a very good payoff. And if it's special, if you control this card on special after it's spelled from the graveyard, you target any monster. And I do repeat this again: it is literally any monster from your graveyard and just summon it to board. You can bring back Dynamondo. You can bring back SP. You can bring back Abal. You can bring back Murakumo for a Raigeki effect. You can bring back other tech choices. It's just really nice. King. I would maybe say King might be one I could see myself taking out. On one hand, this card aesthetically probably a hard, I would say is the definition of a hard guarded in the deck. It is level 8 though, so it can be tributed for Mitsurugi ritual effects. And 2 is that it's very good in the current form where every deck likes to search a lot because it hand rips a random card and it's random too. So you could randomly hit the card or hit their extender so they're forced to go another way. But the main thing about this card is 2 factors. The first one being the Hammer effect deck has really good synergy with Murakumo. Murakumo is an auto negate, but the opponent can negate Murakumo's effect by discarding one card so they're effective as well. The problem is that effect's way better than people think because if you're forced to use resources to out of Mitsurugi end board, you have to do it while being forced to hand rip if you want to do that, right? Take this into consideration. King on the board with Murakumo. If the opponent searches one time, you do King effect to make them pitch a card, and if they hit a really important combo if they need it, they might go another card to force to try to get to it. Then you can do Murakumo to force them to hand rip again. The second one is King has the effect that if any monster the opponent controls goes to the graveyard by an effect, you add any letter dart reptile from your deck or graveyard to your hand. This is important because if you combo this with Murakumo's Raigeki effect, if you revive it, you immediately add back a fallen card from your graveyard, which is really massive because you can add back legitimately anything you like. You can add back something like a Wousu to have a Kaiju follow up to answer any threat they might make after they break your board. You can add back any ritual, like you can add back a Hapaku that uses ritual fodder, so you can add even more follow up. It's just, it's a great fucking card, man. Like, I do think there's some good practice. The third big appealing fact about it is that this is a good card into the multi-permit when every deck plays. Because the theory behind it is, if you get this card out relatively early, at the right timing, you could rip a card from their hand randomly from a multi, which mitigates a draw from it. So this could be good depending on how. Also great if you have this with Ash Blossom. You can Ash one particular one that might hurt you, and then you can just summon Aaron, and then you're forced to get a draw. The draw gets mitigated by Aaron, so it really doesn't matter at that point in time. And like I said, it's random, so if they draw Nibiru and they put you in a spot where like Nib is gonna favor you more often, they might be forced to Nib you that early, and then they'll lose another card anyway. So it's like so it's like in a sense, Aaron was effectively like, depending on the scenario, it could be a 2-for-1 trade. It doesn't seem that impressive. If they get that Endboard setup and you're low on cards, it's going to be hard for you to break their board apart and contest the follow up that count story provides. Wousu, so it's a kaiju. If you do summon it as a kaiju, you are locked at the reptile monsters and effects for the rest of the turn. But again, if you are going second, this is fine. And if you go first and you open say a full loss, you can just hit the full loss treat it as a follow-up. What I would maybe do with this card specifically for people, I would treat this card mainly as a follow-up play if you are going first. If you draw this card, yes, it is a brick, but it's not always the end of the world for you. And remember, if you summon it off Curse, you can actually benefit its Kaiju effect going first and just instant gets good value. And remember, it's for the rest of the turn, so you can still do your main combo of IP set with the Dynamondo. Then you can use this in turn 1 if you have it combined with a Curse on the board. But I think it's been really good in testing in game 1, and it's been good in early testing. Again, this might change. I could see myself taking this out and just put the deck down to 58 cards, but it's been pretty good in testing. Of course, you have to play this card. It's way too good of a card not to play. Yes, the opponent gets a buyback. You can get punished for it, but you could punish them for summoning the body. So there's at least that. One Kusanagi revives, takes any Mitsurugi card from your graveyard or bash back to hand. Very important in the grind game, and gives you strong follow up. 3 Masa, as great as this card is, it's a great 1-card starter. I don't really think we're not going to keep this at 3. I could see myself playing this down to 2. But as good as this card realistically is, there are some hands I have encountered where I open a couple ritual monsters and I open this, and it really blows because there are times that I really wish I had Saji instead of Armasa in my hand in scenarios like that. It's kind of the reason why I'm debating about putting Saji back up to 3 again, because I think, in my personal opinion, if you already got access to Habakiri, I'd rather the Armasa in my hand actually be a Saji instead. Because at least if I open Saji, yes, Saji's not a starter, but Saji's at least versatile and flexible in terms of the options you can pick, since she can search spell and trap cards. We'll test that for now. 3's been okay so far, but I definitely think I'd rather play 2 Aramasa. It's a great starter, but there are times hands and scenarios where I really wish it was any other. I really wish it was Saji instead. One-Eyed Sword. This might as well just be an Ogdoadic card at this point. It's way too important not to run the deck. 3 Full Loss. Thank you, Rated Collection, for making this card affordable. I now have a playset of this in real life, so thank you. This card is insane in this deck specifically. You limit their board, Mitsurugi just takes it apart, then you just answer their follow-up or anything they have left. 3 Noya, also important card, but I could definitely see myself putting this to 2 because most lists now only run 2 of it now because you can easily access it. But one fun fact, this is technically a 1-card star in the deck because you can search Wally to dump Nunu, summon Nunu back, make King, and then you can add Habakiri, so then you have access to Mitsurugi lines that way. Pretty good. On Nunu, unfortunately not a 1-card star anymore because we don't have run Zoha anymore, but you can dump Nephalibis as part of your line so you can play through hand traps. That'd be better. 3 Ash. I can see myself taking this out. I'm only playing this because of the popularity of Mold Charmies, and I don't want to lose to Mold Charmies. But I could realistically see myself taking this out because from what I've seen so far and tested, the highly impactful hand traps like Jewel and Dip are way more important in this format. But cards like Ash Blossom that are just 1-for-1 type trades are usually not very impactful a lot. Other than Rogue, it's not very good into most of the other good decks right now. Like, it's okay into Ryzo if they only have, let's see, if they only have Dual Drive as a way to get to Cross and the other extender. But that's not really going to happen a lot realistically speaking. Mitsurugi does literally nothing. The only thing it hits is Habakiri, Pre-Pep, and the effective ritual summon from the deck with Mitsurugi Ritual. That's realistically it. It does not come up in any other way. It's not. Also, technically, Praise is also pretty good. So it's not bad to Mitsurugi, but you really need to know when to use it. You can't just shotgun it, because otherwise you get hard punished if you shotgun it way too soon. Or just use it at the worst time, you get hard punished for it. Joel. Joel's weird. I think it's mandatory this format, but I don't know if it's main deck worthy. Like, on one hand, if you open this and then... Okay, open it is great. But if you fight against, say, a matchup where it barely searches, like, say, Memento, this card's practically dead against a deck like that. But if you open this against Mitsurugi, you massively cripple their play, so they're forced to end on a really weakened board state. So the rest of the cards. 2 Murakumo. I could see myself maybe putting this to 1. I think once you loop the first one, you really don't need to get access to the second one. I think last format it was mandatory to run it 2, but I think now that we have Habakiri, I don't think we really need to do this. Plus, another thing worth noting, however, is and this is the other thing worth noting. We have Daybreak to cycle it back, so we really don't need to run 2 copies of Murakumo. We could probably just get away with the 1. So you have Abakiri, busted card. You have to play this at 3. This is like the standard 3-off card. It's just way too good not to play. Wousu, not a common card in Raizo. It doesn't see play in Raizo build anymore, but in this build, it's mandatory. It gives you infinite amount of follow-up. It's literally max CS reptile. It limits your, it forces your opponent to commit bodies, and if they do commit bodies, they have to do this while playing around Futsu, which makes the lines awkward. And that happens, you just drop a Raigeki on them and then force them to commit more bodies, and then you have IP Abal to take care of whatever they drop. And now they're forced to end on back row, and this deck just will just play through that shit like literally no problem. Pre-prep, thanks to Mitsurugi and Mirror now mentioning all 3 of their names, pre-prep is now a starter because of Habakiri, which is insane. It's an instant free +1, and it gives full setup without even using your normal, which is absolutely crazy. 3 Snake Ring, I still think it's mandatory 3 of in the deck. Water Lily. I personally am a big fan of Water Lily to Daybreak. I think this is the correct ratio for the package. Because all the times you want to have Naya against couple times your main combo line. It's just way too good not to run. Especially Daybreak. This card is absolutely crazy strong in Mitsurugi. I could even see pure Mitsurugi maybe take this as a 1 or 2. That's because it lets you tribute your guys so you get their benefit. It lets you so many as many toes as you like, so you can do anything you want with a toe. So that it gives you another way to recycle back your Mitsurugi cards in case they do get banished. As long as they don't banish fake now, of course. Very good cards. 1 talent, 2 throws. I only own 2 throws. I definitely might get a throw in to bump the deck up to 60. But 2 has been fine so far. 3 Mitsurugi Ritual. I could see myself putting this to 2, but I think 3 is mandatory personally for pure Mitsurugi and also technically Ogdoadic version. But I do think every other version of Mitsurugi, I think you could definitely just get away with 1 or 2 copies of it. Mirror, as I stated, it's so much from Grave, which does matter a lot. It's a pretty big, huge weakness the deck had, and it's been solved. Called by Maxi, basically hand trap insurance. Droplet, drop is very good this far. Drop is very strong, although you do have to know when to use it. Against Mitsurugi builds, it's not super duper strong against Mitsurugi, but against Balance, it's pretty decent. Prayers, legitimately the most busted Rhoda ever printed. It's quick play, so you can do this in draw phase and immediately play around that way. You can target with this card. You can like play around with the card. Oh man, this Rhoda is pretty busted. I could actually see this going to 1 Sunday in the future. The card is pretty much super cracked. One cross up, this was just a last minute edition, but it's just part of the big 3 to just give you hand trap insurance and purification, which is non-negate, and the grave effect does come up a lot. Actually, Link Spider, not really needed, but you do sometimes play it to help you make Haggard without using level 4. So, but it's very interchangeable. Echidna, don't make it as often as I used to, but it's a great alternate way to get to Habakiri, and it also helps you bypass big beaters that are hard to out. Which is actually crazy because this actually helps you out in the Mitsurugi mirror. Because if they make Habakiri plus IP, that'd be hard for you to break sometimes by battle. But thanks to Echidna, you could just turn IP into a low attack and force them to commit IP effect. Speaking of, we have IP, Haggard. Mouse does take better use of Haggard in terms of its mash effect, but we take full advantage of the second effect better than they can, so the card's insane. SP, don't even explain there. Dark. Dark, I think, is probably a staple in Ogdo Mitsurugi going forward, at least as long as Mitsurugi is playable. In the mirror match, being able to steal your level 4 is so huge because it gives you an ultimate way to get access to your lines. Also good if it's the Ogdoadic version, because then you can steal something like Manoia, or you can steal Nephalibus and just revive back anything you want. Really good card. Now, Endframe. I would have mentioned Endframe specifically here, because I think this is the most interchangeable option, but I am taking this card for the mirror match. Because if my whole board is about to get Raigeki, I can use Endframe to pitch any of my spare monsters, and then just spread it to their board. And once it dies, I can just soul charge as much of my guys back. I can bring my food with it. I can bring my back. It's a cool tech. I really like the tech for that reason. The soldier effect I do think comes up way more often in this version than the alien build. In the alien build, you only play this. The soldier effect never came up, but the soldier effect comes up a lot more here because you can just play around every single board breaker they can summon. It's really great. Dynamondo. This is a brand new edition. Only bad thing about this card, about the first effect worth noting, is it triggers on special summons. So you can ride this back with Nephalibus and trigger the effect again. It does not work with Abile though, because it's a Earth attribute, not Light or Dark. So that is very important to note. Which I guess this does technically lead to another big huge problem is unfortunately this is kind of mid with Dominus Impulse because if you have Dominus Impulse in hand and you force to activate, you lose access to Dynamondo, which is kind of important. But it's a fine worthy trade off because Dominus Impulse is strong anyway. One number unicorn for removal. It also this being a few allows you to break into A-Bile, which is very important because A-Bile is a important part of your end board. Although personally, I don't like doing this for Unicorn because it's more of a going second card. But if you're forced to go into A-Bile to play around cards, it's perfectly a fine trade-off. One difference here is Decode Talker. There is a Pacific card in the side I'm playing for this. But the main thing about this card is it's basically it provides target protection board at the cost of shooting any monster that points this card. Um, the main thing about this card, why that's strong, is in Mitsurugi, your Mitsurugi trigger when they get tributed. This is important because this allows you to play around SP. So like this counters SP on the crackback. No, okay. This card immediately answers SP. It answers Batamondo because Batamondo does have to target a card on the board. So this card, legit, as long as it has points to monster, it's hard not only to out in battle. If you make this with IP, this is immune to card destruction, which is also very good into Mitsurugi Mirror. So this just allows you to just instantly out those cards, and I think that's pretty big. Especially one of the cards he points to is Habakiri, so the monster becomes hard to out. Great card. It's not as good this format, but it is a very good card I might consider keeping in the deck because the target protection is very good and it helps you kill things on the crackback. Next up is the Lane Snapper. This is one of the few reptiles you go into if you're getting reptile locked. The main thing about this card is that this can manage any two monsters to remove back row. That is important because it's a very easy card to make in this deck, and it's back row removal. And on top of that, if you put a reptile or plant the link back into your deck or extra deck while this is engraved, you revive this back, so it's a repeatable back row removal. So this can be very good into the back row heavy matchups like Labyrinth, the Tomb Keeper deck. You could just instantly keep outing their back row and forcing them to interact with this card before you commit to your main play. And I think that's very, very good. The only thing is that sucks if you do this great effect, you'll lock the reptiles. That's fine. Again, if you already got the Mitsurugi inboard all set up, you really don't care about that drawback too much. A-Ball is just self-explanatory. This either contest or it revives the card's crazy. No, it's insane in Ogdoadic Mitsurugi. Alright, XYZs. We are playing only one King of Robes. There have been a lot of cases based on really testing that I did not really need the second King of Robes. But there are times that certain lines where you need the second king to like maybe continue play or set it up as a follow turn. But if I already have my Mitsurugi set up in board, then the second king doesn't really come up. And most of the Ogdo lists I've seen besides Giant Souls list actually only plays one king anyway. But I might consider bringing back two if I decide to take on one of these extra cards. For example, if Enfrey does not come up a lot despite the theory that it could be good in the mirror match, then I can take him out to put in a second king. Or maybe Link Spider. It really depends. Again, this is just early testing for the regional next month, so this is likely not going to be the case at all. Now there's the other one here. It's Code Igniter. Now I will mention the other two effects it does have. They don't come up if you're going first, but going second. But in games 2 and 3 with certain sidekicks we're testing, this could come up in theory. This could come up in practice, but it's all theorycraft. So the two effects are: if it succeeds, you add any Cyber Spiritual from your deck to hand. That's pretty strong. And if it's sensitive against Yugioh, you add any AI trap from your deck to hand. But the main reason you play this card is for the actual second effect, which is the main reason you run it, is you detach one material from it, and you can ritual summon any ritual monster from your hand by treating monsters from your hand or field whose total levels equal or exceed its level. This is pretty important because there are certain lines that, like, if your Mitsurugi ritual gets negated either by Ash or Dominus Impulse or by Solemn Warding or Judgment, Code Igniter is really, really good in this regard because you can easily make it in Mitsurugi. And if you decide to play a small rank 4 package, like say a small Raizo package, or let's say maybe the Spirit Engine, if you want to have level 4 extenders, you can make Code Igniter and then perform a ritual summon that way. Pretty good effect. Actually, a pretty solid effect, all things considered. Now, beside that, we're playing the second copy of Wousu. It's just a testing for now. YCS self-explanatory for Malice matchups. Also, Kriston, very good into Kriston. Technically decent into Kashtira. Not really so good, I think, into Kashtira with Genesis personally, but still a decent card. Then we have 3 Ghostbound Haunted Mansion. I might likely play it. I might likely keep it in the main deck. This card is just really freaking strong. This card is just really, really strong. Not only in the Mitsurugi matchup, because it hits prayers, it hits all the Mitsurugi rituals. If they get search and then some, because it's all the same effect, Ghostbell can hit those cards, which is very huge. You prevent from getting access to their bodies back, which is also massive. The other one too. The other one, this is very good into Malice. This is an insanely good hand trap into Malice. This is probably one of the only few hand traps that in theory is a low impact hand trap similar to the other Ghost Girls. But unlike, for example, Ash, where sometimes it isn't good, this is a card where against Malice, if you know when to drop it, it's very highly impactful. It hurts massive cripples to follow up, and it hurts 3 plays they can do from like a white binder, and that's pretty huge. Now, let's talk about these 2 cards specifically. These 2 cards, I will say, these are very interchangeable. These are only played because we're playing Coding Guy and Decode Talker. Or, well, mainly Decode Talker specifically in this regard, but I'll mention the first one. So, here's this card, Lord of Leviathan. You can ritual summon this as ritual. We're not playing that because the card is terrible. If it's ritual summoned, you can return all monsters your opponent controls with 23 or less attack to hand. Target 1 face of monster your opponent controls, return all links to graveyard to their strength. If you do change that monster's attack to 0, this attack can only be done once per turn, and once per battle during damage calc. If this card battles opponent's monster, quick effect, you can have the attack of that opponent's monster during that damage calculation only. Now, why is this important? Well, it's level 7, so with Code 9's Ritual Summon effect, you can Ritual Summon this out with any Mitsurugi Ritual monster or just any 2 monsters as long as they're combined low. So even a dead Asher Fool can make War of Leviathan. That's actually kind of pretty big. That's pretty big for hands like that. You can return a spare Nibiru token you were given by the opponent or even one of your own and just instantly like tribute this thing off. You can also tribute a Wousu, that spare one that's on your board, and then you can just tribute it and then add back Wousu, so now you have a Kaiju set up with a board breaker. But another good one is that this returns them to the hand instead of destroying them, which is pretty good if they have a board that's protected by board or that. You can just put them all back in the hand instead, which is pretty big. But it also has a Q interaction with Hapakiri, so if you do, say, Coding Iron to ritual this card and you tribute off Hapakiri on your board, you can do Chainlink 1 or Water Line to the bounce, and then Chainlink 2 Hapakiri to search and then revive it. Once his effect fully resolves, the 800 attack reduction immediately goes up, and so as a result, any monster that has at max 3100 attack instantly gets outed by Water Leviathan. So again, for example, Yugioh, if you force out a cross and you make the setup, immediately right off the gate, immediately right off the freaking gate, your opponent, your Yugioh detonator is likely either gone or you're forcing them to waste a pop. The Water Leviathan board nuke, and that's good because that gets rid of because that forces them to get rid of a pop. So it either forces interaction or, if best case for you, it results in a board wipe on their board. And now there's AI partners. Actually in the TCG it's called AI sidekicks. So the main thing is you target face-up card your opponent controls equal to the number of Cyrus monsters you control with 2300. So the main thing about this card worth noting is you do have technically 2 targets for this one. There's Decode Talker himself, which is often the main guy you use it with, but there's also Coding Guy because he's 23. If you have Abile on there as part of your setup, you can do Abile to revive back the code, so now you can get up to 2 effects. Although, do keep in mind, however, and this is important, this cannot be up to the number. It has to be matched. It has to be exactly the number of cards they own. So the more realistic optimal approach is literally just adding a Decode Talker with this. And then if they play a card that requires a negate, then you just do AI sidekicks for that. And that's that is kind of unfortunate, a bit unfortunate, but in scenarios like this, you are sometimes forced to do, which is a bit unfortunate. But the second effect does come up, not too often, but it does come up. If we played Access Code Target, we can bash Decode Target and use the Grand Effect to revive it. Not really used. Magatama, I'm testing this for now, but in theory, it gives you another way to ritual summon, just in case if Mitsurugi ritual gets outed or gets negated. But it also gives you a way to out face-up cards, and it could be any card. So it could be floodgate effects that could be really annoying for you. Pretty good option. Pretty good. Devastation Virus and Summer Archfiends. These are what Dragon Soul played, and I actually have been liking them so far. Another virus trick you can run over this is Eradicate with Damp Virus to hit spell and traps. I personally think that after way more testing, that I have found Deck Devastation Virus has been more impactful because it hits the best monsters in the game right now. But it is still, but Eradicate is still a very good card. I would maybe side deck that card in maybe over AI partners or AI sidekicks if you want, and just play like maybe that trap with it so you have a thrust target. Summer Archfiend, my opinion, this might be pretty good this format. We'll have to see. But against Fiendspit builds, like if you drop this at the right time, like say they summon Closed Heaven, the opponent really is forced to likely skip that turn, or they have to get rid of it first and then make the Cyrus Link and then continue from that position. They would have to play around this card the whole time. But that's like fine because it forces them to play around the card and against, but especially against Malice, this card might be super powerful into Malice if you drop this at the right timing. Because if they're forced, because if you like maybe get rid of their first monster, they might be forced to commit to like a Splash Mage. Then you drop this, and now they're forced to likely just skip their turn because Malice needs to keep lane climbing in order to make their end board. And keep in mind, this is a lingering effect. So even if like they pop this card, it does not matter. Like they're stuck in that position. It's very. Last three cards are also interchangeable. I'm playing double Solemn Judgment one morning. The Solemn Judgment makes a lot of sense, although you can interchange this card with Solemn Strike if you like. It's very interchangeable. But I want to mention Solemn Warning in this regard. I'm testing out Solemn Warning in the theory-based department that against Mitsurugi, this is really good to hit Mitsurugi Ritual because you negate the summon or the activation. But the main thing is this negates the activation of the card. So if you know for a fact to commit one more time to Mitsurugi Ritual, then you can just do Solemn Warning to negate the effect. But also, um, it is also good into Malice because it hits every Malice monster that would attempt to summon cells if they get bashed. This can be good into Whitebinder because it does state a monster effect that includes event, especially summons a monster. I could maybe see Psalm Warrior being a bit better than I think people get credit for, but but I'll see in testing. But in theory, this might be pretty good into the best decks right now. It's still pretty good into Rizal because you can negate the summon a Detonator, which is also pretty good. But like I said beforehand, these three cards they can be interchangeable for Soft Strike depending on the circumstance. Well, let's see. Now, before I end the deck profile, so that's for the deck. But before I end the video, I'm going to go over some of the text you can run. Firstly, I'm going to mention the Plant Pollutant Virus package. You can run the package with Cosmic Slice War, which is effectively a booster. The only reason why I don't run the card is specifically because if you already made your main Mitsurugi Endboard, you've already won the game. You likely already won the game at that point. So the alien package is pretty much now way more because of Mitsurugi. But the fourth place Austrian Nationals build did run the package, so it still has a place in the deck. I just think it's win more nowadays, but it's good. Another option you can run is wait a second. I think it's number 41. Yeah, you can run Babushka as an option. As your alternative to Zor. Very easy to make, and also this plus Mitsurugi setup is like so hard for your opponent to deal with, especially if you say have Habakuri face up as a part of your end board. Habakuri makes this card nearly impossible to out in battle because of the fact that this thing is 2000 defense. They need a monster that has at least 2900 attack to out the stand in battle. So they are forced to go into a setup to like they're forced to go into SPR Nightmare Unicorn to out this card. And if they reach that far, you just right Genki their whole board. You just right Genki or move their freaking board. It's crazy, man. But yeah, so that's kind. There's some other tech choices here you can also run. You can run Book of Moon or Eclipse if you like. They're both pretty good options. They help you dodge targeting. But that's kind of it. Thank you very much for watching, everyone. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I don't know. This likely will not be the final version of the deck, but I have been liking what this deck's been feeling like in testing. Thank you very much for watching, everyone, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.